I love this movie so much.
Thank you for expressing yourself.
I love it so much. Welcome to Shadow and Light, a film podcast with Molly and Sarah. I'm Molly.
And I'm Sarah.
And today we're talking about The Shape of Water. I love it so much.
It's a beautiful, beautiful film.
I love it
have met people who do not like this film.
I cannot relate even a little bit to that.
I understand that. I saw this in the theater twice. Once before you and I watched it with my current, now ex, thank God, boyfriend, and two friends that are basically no more than acquaintances at this point in time. You and I saw it, though, as
oh my God.
a morning showing. I think the only morning showing I've ever gone to.
We went to like a 10:30
movie.
showing.
Yeah.
And sobbing. Tears streaming down my face at the end of the movie as we were driving home, and I couldn't shut up. I couldn't stop talking about it. The only other time that's happened is when we watched Annihilation, and that's because my brain was like, I think I just did drugs and didn't know it.
Yeah.
But
I swear to God, someone slipped you a mushroom at that point.
Oh my gosh.
But anyway,
The Shape of Water
is
seriously, this movie is hands down one of my favorite movies of all time.
Yeah.
The only other movies that I think could compete with it for the term favorite movie is Disney's Beauty and the Beast, because that's been huge to me, and The Fellowship of the Ring.
Yes.
Because I love that film. I love the Lord of the Rings trilogy itself, but I do love Fellowship. I love all three.
Maybe I missed it, but I didn't realize that it was that important to you when we first watched it.
The Fellowship?
No, the
Shape of Water.
Shape of Water.
Well, I mean,
I suppose you'd only just seen it.
For
but
the
it
first
climbed
time.
the charts pretty darn quick, because this is
It really did.
2017?
Yeah.
Okay.
And, I mean, this movie got all kinds of awards.
For best film.
Yeah, best picture.
Which
at the Oscars.
really surprised me getting best film, because I knew it was up for it. I always watch the awards, even though I complain the whole time, oh my gosh, these awards are so stupid. And yet I torture myself every year. I did not expect it to win best picture because, I mean, it's about a woman who fucks a fish man, essentially. And it's full of huge commentary about racism, sexism, homophobia, ableism. It's rife with basically talking
toxic
about
toxic
masculinity as well, and basically, covering a giant swath of subjects that are important in today's society.
And I mean, deserves the title Best Picture.
It really does. It really does. And I know that it was a tough subject for people in terms of, the kind of whole monster club thing, and I get that, but at the same time, it was such a great vehicle for.
We will get to that.
Yeah,
it's not about. That's like what with that's a bad faith criticism, as what Lindsay Ellis calls when people also say that about like Beauty and the Beast, like like she fucked like a buffalo guy. It's like that's not it.
Buffalo man, I never heard that before.
Or whatever, like that's not it. That's not it. Right. Stop being. Pedantic little and you can feel free to censor that if you want.
I will be censoring the hell out of this one. No, I think that is when people take that stance, it really bothers me because it's like, you're not looking at the bigger picture. You're not looking at all the intricacies of this. Yeah, okay, granted, that's part of the subject matter, and you're maybe you're not comfortable with it. Maybe it weirds you out.Maybe you secretly like it and just are in denial. I don't know. But talking about that in that way is really reductive. If you're looking at especially a film of this caliber and this great value, talking about such huge themes, you're basically just disregarding all those important points that Guillermo is making, just because of the very, brief synopsis of something that you've read in a crappy review somewhere.
Right, exactly. I mean, I guess getting into this, we can do a quick summary. It's a Beauty and the Beast tale.
Yes.
For those of you who just want that heads up. It's about a woman played by Sally Hawkins who is mute, not deaf, mute. And she works as a janitor at this government facility somewhere. And it's 1960, so it's the Cold War. And this guy, Strickland, I think his name is, played by an actor whose name I can't think of right now, but you recognize his face.
Yes. He has a very recognizable square face.
Yes. Returns from the Congo, Brazil, South America.
It might be the Amazon, actually, but he says he says somewhere in South America, I believe. Okay. But I'm pretty sure it's the Amazon.
Okay. He returns with this creature, and they want to study the creature because if they can learn how the creature breathes underwater or whatever, it's going to help with a space race somehow, whatever.
Everything's tied to the Soviets in 1960s America.
Yeah, exactly. And so he sort of, being the big white man he is, like, you know, is torturing the creature and all this stuff. And Eliza, Sally Hawkins' character, ends up meeting the creature because she's cleaning this room, and the two sort of start to fall in love with each other.
Yeah.
And the film ends with them getting a happy ending, which is crazy because looking at what where this film comes from, and that's something I think we kind of want to talk about tonight. That's totally not the norm for monster stories.
Nope.
And it's just so beautifully done, and it's really a film about love and empathy and loving the other. And I mean, it could not come out at a better time in terms of what we need.
It was absolutely perfect timing.
So I guess in terms of research, a lot of the research I did, as always, is on YouTube. Lindsay Ellis, my favorite video essayist ever, came out with a video called My Monster Boyfriend, which is how I found this in the first place. And she sort of talks about how did we get to where we are with The Shape of Water. And she traces it all the way back to the idea of Beauty and the Beast stories, or what we call animal courting stories. Animal courting stories. I actually, when I was in London last year, I got an Oxford compendium of a bunch of animal courting stories from all over the world. And there's so many. Like, every culture has a variant of, like, animal brides, or woman marries an animal and it either turns out well, or it's like, ooh, she fell in love, but guess what? It was a hyena, so listen to your mother, and it's okay to be an arranged marriage. And so she sort of talks about that history, and then how the dynamic of that Beauty and the Beast thing kind of shifted at the start of the 20th century with Birth of a Nation.
Yeah.
Which I haven't seen, but it's a film that glorifies the KKK. And there's a character called Gus, who's played by a white man in blackface, who tries to assault a white woman. And she's like, I would rather die, and jumps off a cliff and killed herself. And then the heroic KKK kill him, and that's what it is. And the reason she brings that up, sort of in the context of tracing the Beauty and the Beast stories, is that later on, you know, as we got older, or as the century got older, you know, you couldn't express anxieties in the same way quite as vividly. And so, for better or for worse, a lot of the monsters in general, signify social anxiety, period. A lot of the monsters in these later sort of films kind of came to be coded as other races. Not necessarily, like, super intentionally, but it's there. I mean, King Kong is from it's like the land man forgot. The creature from the Black Lagoon is from the Amazon. A lot of, like, those creature features where it's like bride of the gorilla or whatever, these monsters are coming from colonized countries where we have anxieties about.
Yeah, and exoticized stuff too.
Yeah. And so from the 1950s is where we get Creature from the Black Lagoon, which is the big one. Quote unquote, the big one for this film. Yeah. But also just in terms of those monsters, it's hugely iconic.
But that was Universal, right?
It was Universal.
Yeah, and Guillermo loves his Universal monsters.
He does. And originally he wanted this to be the remake of Creature of the Black Lagoon, but Universal's like, no, we want to do our dark universe, and so we got Shape of Water instead. And,
which I'm happy with, actually.
Oh, me too. So what, one of the things Guillermo says, talking about a creature, is from this interview. So what he says in this interview is that, the whole movie, The Shape of Water, is rooted in my memory as a 6-year-old of seeing Creature from the Black Lagoon and seeing the gill man swimming underneath Julie Adams and falling in love with her. Falling in love with him, and falling in love with him, falling in love with her. The way I saw the movie, I was hoping they would end up together, but not only do they not end up together, but they kill the creature. Well, to a point. There's a sequel and another sequel. But he gets his home invaded and then roughed around, you know? So I thought, dear Lord, what a horrible story. What a beautiful movie, but what a horrible deal for the creature.
Yeah.
He was at home swimming, and these guys barge in, he gets excited and thinks maybe he's in love, and they kill him. And that's the way he sort of saw Creature, and so that's what he wanted to consciously undo with The Shape of Water, because, I mean, he just loved it so much.
He's such a wonderful fanboy.
He is.
He is the living embodiment of everyone who looks at a film and goes, how can I make this a fan fiction?
Exactly. Well,
but in the most informed way, and he's seeing such deeper issues underneath there, you know, with the whole, you know, home invasion thing.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Not to even talk about colonialism, although that is like
Partly
it's part of the movie,
part of the narrative.
But sort of tracing back / jumping forward, then the 70s and 80s sort of saw a turn in how people started to look at monsters, and Disney movies, I mean, for what they are, with Beauty and the Beast and Hunchback, really made it a point to be like, who is the monster, who is the man, those being two big themes of those films, and monsters really started to be reclaimed by growing vocal minority groups like people of color and the LGBT community as beings they could sort of empathize with, because they too were ostracized by a white heteronormative patriarchal society for being different or whatever. And that's something that's really present in the film, because not only do we have Eliza falling in love with the amphibian man, but there is a woman of color who is oppressed by the Strickland character. There is Eliza's neighbor, Richard Jenkins, who is a closeted gay man in the 60s and also wants to find connection. There is the Russian who is just trying to do what is best for humanity, but gets caught up in this government thing. And
this movie is all about underdogs.
It's about underdogs, and it's about otherness, 100%. And that's kind of what he says. So he kind of wrote the character of Eliza for Sally Hawkins. And she came to him around the time that he came to her with the idea of the story of this mermaid who doesn't realize she's a mermaid and ends up becoming a mermaid, or was like a lost mermaid, something like that. And that's kind of, I think, what got incorporated to the marks on her neck that turned into the gills at the end of the film. And so what he said about The Shape of Water, and just kind of with Sally, is that he watched a film she was in called Fingersmith. He said she falls in love with a woman because she falls in love with a woman. That's it. There's no perverse titillation or luridness. It just is. I thought the love story here was going along similar lines, talking about The Shape of Water. I thought she was going to fall in love with a creature that is not a real animal. It's not bestiality. It's just the other. It represents the otherness, you know? And instead of turning him into a prince like Beauty and the Beast, he reminds her of a part of her nature that was sort of locked, and he unlocks that for her. But sexuality is very much part of the equation for me in the way you can see, again, a love story between Richard Jenkins, artist, and the pie shop guy. He really loves that guy, and there's a beauty to it, and a sweetness that's disarming as well. And so I think he's very aware of, like, the people that are going to be like, bestiality or whatever, but it's not about that. It's about loving the other, especially when society around you doesn't value them in any way.
Sexuality in this film is so interesting to me. Rewatching most of this movie today, I was struck by, there's so many different things going on. There's first, the movie starts out with her getting ready for work, and she pleasures herself. And that's a huge point about women being in control of their own sexual desire and their own pleasure, and that being something that, it's a very taboo subject. I mean, no one talks about female masturbation. No. And yet here we have a male director talking about female pleasure, and I think that was a really, really important. I mean, it was important for him to talk about it or portray it in such a way that it was healthy. It wasn't really voyeuristic too much.
Not at all.
It was more just, no, this is part of her routine in the morning. She puts her egg timer on and waits for her, her eggs to boil. She takes care of her own, physical sensation and needs, and that's part of her whole routine. They see her polishing shoes. Like, her whole routine is, it's just showing her and how she exists in the world as an autonomous being. Yeah.
And, in so many of those monster movies, the women that get sold, like, white womanhood and virtue is kind of this status quo, and already it's being undermined in the first few minutes.
Yep.
Because she is in charge of her life in that way, and she doesn't have to be protected or by a man the way everything has to be protected by a man.
She lives alone. She doesn't have a caretaker. She takes care of herself. I mean, she does have her friend at work.
Yeah, but it's never like her virtue has to be protected, which is so much of what those, like, the creature of the Black Lagoon is. Like, 100%.
Yeah, exactly. And then the thing that always fascinates me is, what's the name of the actor? I think is it Michael Shannon?
Yes, okay. Michael Shannon.
So he's really great in this role, and
as Strickland, he's the government guy.
He's the true monster of the film.
Who's like, he's not God. Like, God created man. God created himself or man to look like him.
Yeah.
So what the hell are you? Or like, he's just
basically
what we in the literary world call a giant.
Yeah, exactly. And his sexuality is really interesting in this film
Oh, it's
because
terrifying.
I love how the love acts are portrayed in this film.
Mhm.
Like when Eliza makes love with Gilman or the Fishman or however you want to call him.
You don't see it
You
at
don't.
all.
He doesn't have a name. You don't see the
Anything.
actual act. You see the romance of it, and you see the true bond between them. And you see her naked body and his naked body, which is basically naked the whole time. But it's a much more romanticized, beautiful thing. Whereas you see him fucking his wife, and it's rude. It seems to be without a lot of affection. He wants her to be silent, which to me suggests that he has a bit of a thing for Eliza.
Oh, which he does
Eventually, in a very, very creepy, horrible way,
says
hit
to her
on
later.
her.
And it's like, I bet I could make you scream or
Yeah,
something like that.
yeah.
Like, it's horrifying.
So I find that to show that difference between what is supposedly the norm, aka to like a white couple of a one man and one woman in bed together, is portrayed in a negative way, and then to see her with her fish man making love in a beautiful way as portrayed in this positive light is really interesting to show that huge conversation.
No, I absolutely agree.
I do love the moment where what's the name of her
Zelda.
friend? Zelda.
Yes.
Zelda's like, oh no, you didn't, did you? And of course Eliza is just smiling to herself. And she's like, basically, Zelda's like, how does that work? And she does this little mime with her hands where she kind of shows how what seemingly is a sort of flat front part of the fish man with her hands, puts her hand out to indicate that he has a certain appendage. And Zelda's reaction
is hilarious.
Oh my God, it's Octavia Spencer, right?
Yes.
She is the master of reaction, and she's so good in this to show. It's like, when you share that kind of weird moment with your friend, and your friend looks at you and you're like, what?
Yeah, what did you get yourself into? Yeah, she's great. Well, and Guillermo wrote this role for her too.
Oh, cool.
I mean, very deliberately
tailored to her.
Yeah,
that's nice to know.
Which is amazing. Yeah, I mean, I feel currently paralyzed about just what I could possibly want to say about this movie because there is so much. I mean, I think we kind of touched on monsters being sort of allegory for oppressed groups and the importance of Beauty and the Beast narratives, which, I mean, oh my gosh, that's totally in my
Yeah.
Let me see here.
What was your favorite scene?
Oh.
That's a painful question.
That is such a painful question. I mean, I really love just readjusting. I really love the scene where they're sitting at the kitchen table and they're sitting across from each other. The fisherman is doing something. And she is trying so hard. Like, she wants to be able to use her voice to tell him how she feels. And it goes into this extended dream sequence of them dancing together.
Very Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers.
100%. That's what it's modeled after. And it's just so... It could have been presented like one of those Mel Brooks sort of like, Frankenstein dancing with his monster sort of like goofy thing. But it's so earnest and beautiful. And like that's like old films. Is that what her and her neighbor really watch?
They watch all of those and that inspires them and keeps them going kind of thing.
Yeah. And so that's how she would want to be able to tell him. And the song is You'll Never Know How Much I Miss You. You'll never know how much I care. You went away and my heart went with you. And that's because she knows their time is short. And oh my gosh, the scene at the docks, I'm going to cry just thinking about it because he's learned sign language or her version of sign language. And he's like, you and me together. And she's like, no, you have to go because like they're going to come after you. I can't protect you. And sobbing at that point in the theater. Like, and like, every interaction between the two of them, I mean, I love it so much. I'm seriously going to start crying, and there's no reason for me to cry because we're going to have brownies after this. It's just so...
It's so beautiful.
It's so beautiful because the love there is just so pure, and there's that scene, too, where she's with Richard Jenkins, And he is not understanding, like, why do you want to do this? You're going to get in trouble. It's
that's
a
my
risk.
favorite scene, I think.
Yes.
I think I saw some of that in the preview, and
Yes.
I was actually crying as I was watching television.
Yeah. No.
Going, wow, okay, I have to see this in the theater.
Because she just is angrily signing, and so he's, like, speaking aloud what she's saying.
It honestly feels like she's yelling, but she's literally not saying anything.
No.
It's incredible. Especially, and then he's like, I gotta go,
Mm-hmm.
and he's walking down the hall. She slams her hand on the wall, and he turns around to look. Just her power in those scenes is just, it's visceral, it's beautiful, and it's so captivating.
Yeah. And what she says to him, like the words that he repeats back, is like so, it just encapsulates so perfectly the message of this movie and what that love is supposed to be. When he looks at me, he does not know what I lack or how I am incomplete. He sees me for what I am as I am.
God, that's incredible.
Like, it's just...
I have tears in my eyes literally right now.
I'm tearing up as I'm speaking. Like, it's just...
Wow.
I mean, and you know, especially... Because she is othered. I mean, a lot of the characters in the movie are othered.
All of them, yeah.
Yeah. And it's about loving the other. And that's really what I think all of us who are drawn to, you know, Beauty and the Beast stories and this story and monsters in general, you know, we all see that desire or feel that desire to be loved for what you are.
Yeah.
Like 100%. That's what everyone wants, to be loved for what you are and who you are, even in spite of the fact that you're not perfect or you're different. And I mean, God, he just does it so well.
And that's another point that I want to make about the whole perfect thing. And then you see this guy, Strickland, he's a perfect life, right? He's got the white picket fence dream. You know, he's got this big job. He's got a perfect wife. He's got 2 kids. He's got
the car of the future.
And the car thing cracks me up because as soon as you see that beautiful, beautiful car, you know that's going to get completely destroyed. And it does.
Yes.
It gets, like, the side gets ripped off.
By a laundry truck.
Poetic justice. So that whole homogenized white picket fence dream that I absolutely detest with all my heart and soul is completely dissected and destroyed in this film and lit on fire and you know, sprayed with gasoline.
Yeah.
I just think that's such a great statement that, you know, the dream of the perfect scenario is destroyed while the supposedly unperfect dream of her ending up with the other and having a happy life is actually comes to fruition. I mean, that's just astounding.
Yeah. Because, and we haven't said it explicitly yet, but the film ends, they're on this pier, and Strickland shows up, and he shoots her and him.
I know. At that point, I was like, should I just walk out of the theater? Because I cannot bear an unhappy ending.
I know. And so she, you know, falls over, and the creature sort of, you think the creature's dead, but then he stands up, and he walks over to Michael Shannon, who's like, you are a god, and like cuts his throat with his...
Rendering him silent.
Cuts his throat with, like, his
nails, I think.
Nails.
Claws,
because
whatever.
It turns out what they did capture was kind of an Amazon River god.
Yeah.
And so he takes Eliza's dead body and, like, shares a brief goodbye with Richard Jenkins' character and kind of looks at Zelda.
And Zelda's there, too,
and then jumps into the water. And the pier opens to the ocean, and then that's how they're supposed to get back home.
Yeah.
And they're underwater. And he is able to breathe life back into her, and like the marks on her neck that originally were what we thought kept her silent were actually like gills, and so you see that like they were made for each other.
Yeah.
Then you get this beautiful, like, I wrote down the entire thing yesterday because I knew I was going to want to say it.
Good. I was hoping you.
Yeah, Richard Jenkins' monologue at the end. It just this was the part when we saw the movie for the first time. I was audibly sobbing, like doing the theater as he's talking, and poor Sarah, like, you had to listen to me, and we were
it's fine.
The only 2 people in the theater.
We were?
There might have been like one other couple or something like that, but we got like perfect seats, and I was full on like at this point. And he says, if I told you about her, what would I say? That they lived happily ever after? I believe they did. That they were in love. That they remained in love. I'm sure that's true. But when I think of her, of Eliza, the only thing that comes to mind is a poem whispered by someone in love hundreds of years ago. Unable to perceive the shape of you, I find you all around me. Your presence fills my eyes with your love. It humbles my heart, for you are everywhere. And that's how the film ends, with them together underwater. I know.
I'm misty.
I know. It's so good.
And now where does that poem come from?
I don't think it came from anywhere.
I think he just made that
I
up.
think he made it up too.
Good Lord.
I know. And like that poem is so beautiful. I mean, literally everything about this movie is amazing. Like this.
Yeah.
God.
The idea of The Shape of Water being something that you integrate with is also another commentary, I think, on the whole falling in love with the other kind of thing, and having a certain amount of, understanding for the other, or camaraderie, or whatever you want to call it. This idea that, you behave like water.
Right.
And you surround each other and you mingle with each other, and it's not a certain thing where it's like, okay, it's not cold, it's not, a transaction, it's not this awful existence. It's completeness. It's being part of a whole. It's connecting with each other. And I just think that's an incredible metaphor. That whole poem is an incredible metaphor for that understanding that is lacking.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what Shape of Water, The Shape of Love, it's the exact same thing. Water makes us up. It's in us. It's what we're made of.
Yeah.
Same with love. Water can be put into something and held in a specific shape, but really it doesn't. There is no form that it takes that is uniform or that really can be contained. Same with love. I mean, like, this film is just, I mean, it is a work of love.
Oh, yeah.
And it is a work about love, and God is just so good, and the entire, when he was winning all of the awards for this stuff, like, he just said the greatest things, like, monsters are the patron saints of our imperfection. We are absolved by them. Yeah. All of this, like, crazy good stuff. And at this point, I was, like, that entire award season, I was just like, God.
Yeah.
Ugh, you're the best.
I was yelling at the screen, Guillermo.
I know.
When he won, I think what really shocked me about the whole award ceremony and him actually winning Best Picture was the fact that people appreciated something like this. Something by a Mexican director.
Yes.
He's not really a part of Hollywood in that sense because he's ostracized for not being, typical white American.
No, he's an other.
He's an other himself. And also a film with so many transgressive ideas being getting an award from basically another system and another, I don't know, big tall tower essentially, and here he is being awarded for a work of true love and purity. I thought
100%.
That was astounding to me.
And like the most transgressive idea is that everything and everyone is capable of and deserves love. Like that is not a message we get in films ever.
Pretty much not.
No.
I can't really, the other ones don't come to mind other than Guillermo films.
No, but like, and that's what he was saying about Crimson Peak too. Like these days, the most transgressive thing is to believe wholeheartedly in something like love and not be cynical about it.
Yeah, that's a mood.
Which is, I mean,
wow.
It's almost been like half an hour already. Let's just briefly kind of talk about like the technical stuff here because I already know what I'm gonna give this movie.
Yeah.
Like briefly,
20 gills out of 10.
Oh my God, more than that. There's a podcast called The Next Picture Show. I'm pretty sure it's what it's called. And so if you're looking for a deep dive on The Shape of Water and The Creature of the Black Lagoon and the relationship between them, I highly recommend listening to those. It's about 2 hours of content. I wasn't able to get through it.
Yeah.
Like all of his works, there are companion books that talk more in depth, sort of about the process of making the characters, and the work that went into the world. I mean, this is. So briefly, the tech stuff. This is another example of Guillermo del Toro loves the color blue because
wow, it's everywhere.
It's not like an exact blue, but it's teal. Like it's a tealy blue.
Teal blue.
It's the color of the future, but it's also the color of the Amazon and like the creature and where he comes from and.
A heightened reality of what water is almost. Yes, and 100%. Our perception symbolically of water is usually to do with, the color blue. And a very kind of extreme sort of blue as a sort of symbol rather than the actual blue.
Yeah. And the only red in the film really is the color of her headband when after...
And her shoes.
And her shoes when they're in love, when they've expressed love to each other, like if that's how you want to say it.
They've gained biblical knowledge of one another.
Exactly. I want to say, we didn't talk about this, but there is a scene once they get her they rescue the creature from the facility, and he
yeah.
stays for a while at Eliza's apartment. And there is one scene where he's visiting the neighbor, visiting in Ruck quotes, and he accidentally eats one of the neighbor's cats.
Oh, yikes.
It's hilarious, the way they play it off.
Meet my boyfriend. He accidentally ate my neighbor's cat.
It's fine. I've dated worse.
Ouch. Yeah, same.
Yeah. And there's a great scene between Richard Jenkins and the Fishman too. Sorry, there's two.
Yeah.
That's not what we're talking about.
No,
we're talking
seriously,
about technical stuff. Okay,
wrap it up. It's
technical
hard.
stuff. And I know. Okay, so this was a 3-hour costume process for Doug Jones to get into the suit.
Good
So,
Lord.
I mean, like, there's a suit and then there was makeup, and the gills that were attached were mechanical. So those moved on set, and the eyes had to be like really
CGI.
specifically made and painted. But yeah, then they CGI'd like the eyelids and things like that later.
Wow.
And it took 3 years to design the suit as well.
Good God. I mean, it's a technical feat.
It is. Like, it's and the
I've
great
never
thing is
seen
it's
any other film
distinct
like that.
from The Creature of the Black Lagoon and from Abe Sapien, another fish creature Doug Jones has played. But it still you can feel the homages, I think, to both. And it's like a very beautiful creature,
but you
too.
don't feel
and
like it's a guy... Sorry, it's a what?
It's a fit creature, too.
Yeah.
But you'd never feel for a moment that it's a guy in a suit.
That's it, I was going to say.
Never.
Yeah.
I mean, Guillermo is a master, as we've said, of blurring or of using the CGI and the physical perfectly, knowing when to use one more than the other, and only ever using CGI to enhance physical effects, which I think is genius, and I can't say that enough, especially about all of these, like, CGI crap fest that we get today, but it's fine. I'm just an old man standing on his lawn get out of my lawn and give me an actual man in an actual suit for the live action Beauty and the Beast, you holes.
Yeah.
I have a lot of feelings about it.
We have a lot of feelings about CGI.
Yeah.
And it should have been Dan Stevens in an outfit rather than a CGI face.
We will talk about that.
We'll
movie
go there
someday.
next time at some point.
Not next time.
Not next time. Not
sometime
next week,
when I am calm and maybe medicated slightly with some wine, because it's going to be...
Well, keep her sedated.
Yeah. Hilariously, Del Toro did, like, the fish breathing sounds. He does the creature's vocals. Like, not the chirps. Not like the animal sounds.
Are you joking?
No, and he does that apparently for, like, all of the movies. He does... which I was like, of course he does, because I couldn't love him more.
He's breathing life into the characters, literally. Okay.
Yeah. The movie was made for $20 million, $19.5 million budget. I think they were able to give back like $1 million to the studio because they didn't use it all.
Oh.
Which is crazy.
That's remarkable.
And then, let's see. Otherwise, I mean, the only other big thing is that they did the dry for wet technique for almost all of the underwater scenes. So dry for wet is when you... shoot everything at a really high speed and you use a ton of smoke. Like the opening scene. So when it looks like they're underwater and everything is settling down, everything is on wires, there's tons of fans going, there's smoke, you shoot it really fast, and then the actor sort of pantomime that they're floating or whatever, and then you just add in bubbles and the effects later. So they did it for the opening.
Boy, it looked really great, though.
I know. They did it anytime he's in the tank. Not the water surface one, but the one with the window. That's dry for wet. And then at the end, too, that final scene when they're underwater.
Of course,
they'd have to. That's dry for wet, too.
Oh, that's interesting.
I know, which is incredible.
Wow.
Because that's a very old school film technique, but it works so well.
Yeah. Sometimes, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Exactly.
I think that's what I really I admire so much about Guillermo is his judgment calls and the way that he uses, like you said, he uses technology when he needs it. And when he wants to do something that's more basic, that is tried and true, he sticks with it. That's really important.
And it gives it that real sense of authenticity that makes it be like, yes, this absolutely could have happened in our world.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And that blurring of the real and fantastic and that they're really the same and just so beautiful. I mean,
this is such an authentic film. I mean, not like just technically as we've recapped, all of that is very authentic and gives an authentic feel. It's an emotional, immersive experience. You don't feel like you're pulled out of that.
Yeah.
But then it's authentic in the sense that he is doing this purely. It's an act of love. The movie is an act of love.
An act of love for the things he loves, monsters. Yeah. And also for his overarching philosophy about love, which is
Mhm.
beautiful. And I mean, I think it kind of a good final thought to leave it on
Mm.
is what Doug Jones kind of thinks about the movie. And he
Yeah.
says, for me, this movie is about love being possible no matter how flawed and ugly we think we are.
Wow.
And I mean, everyone just fell in love with that story and was totally on board for the message, which I think is amazing. And I don't have anything else I think I need to say about this movie beyond just enthusiastic screaming about how amazing and perfect it is. So, is there anything else you want to touch on? Because otherwise, I'm ready to go to ratings.
Not really. I'm ready to rate as well.
Well, this, as I have stated, this is 100% in my top 3 favorite movies. I get 12, 200, 5,000 fishmen out of 10.
Yeah.
I want a fish monster boyfriend. Where's mine?
Yep.
You know? Like, there's a great Tumblr post that came out around this time that was like, you know, everyone on the internet being like, you know, like, women want this, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And then it's like, me, parentheses, willing to trade every man in existence for a fish monster boyfriend, like, raise his hand in the air. Yes, that is what I want. Thank you, Guillermo del Toro, for giving me what I've wanted.
He knows what the ladies like. He knows what the people like. I think another thing that I read too was probably another Tumblr post about people saying how it's a pretty sad time when, as viewers, that we prefer a fish man to like most other leading men because the fish man is such a nice being.
Mm-hmm. He's pure, beautiful, loving being.
Other than eating a cat, he's wonderful and perfect.
Mm-hmm. And he treats Eliza
with deep
so
respect.
well. And how sad is it that you have to go to fantasy to find
a
guy that'll treat you well? Anyways, not to get dark.
Yeah. So my rating is definitely 20 gills out of 10.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, seriously though, 10 out of 10 both for my personal choice and also for the recommendation.
Agree. Same.
Because it's just, I mean, and someone actually saw that I had the DVD today, and I know it's not her type of film, but I recommended it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's just a beautiful film, and it may jar you, it may not have things that you're willing to think about, but it's such a valuable film on so many different levels, and it's just beautiful.
Yeah.
It's a love story.
Well, until next time. You'll never know just how much I miss you. You'll never know just how much I care. You went away and my heart went with you. You can cut me off when you want.
Okay.